This science fiction story begins by introducing a reporter named Eliana, who has come to a portion of Antarctica where there is absolutely no snow. Eliana remarks that this is very strange because amidst such large, icy mountains, there is a small area with no snow at all. This is quite thought-provoking, perhaps indicating that the temperature of our Earth is rising significantly. On the other hand, we are introduced to a scientist named Jane, who worked for a private company. Jane was continuously conducting space research exploration with his friend Calvin, where he had to record all the signals coming from space. Even after many years, Jane had not received the results he was expecting. Suddenly, Jane receives a call from his wife, urging him to come home. As Jane heads home, he notices that his signal device is receiving signals on a very large scale. When Jane and Calvin checked thoroughly, they discovered that these signals were coming from many light years away, not from the explosion of a planet or star, but rather through artificial means. Jane realizes that these signals must have been sent by aliens living on another planet. They quickly record everything, but these signals disappear within seconds. Despite their efforts, Calvin and Jane are unable to retrieve them. Jane and Calvin present their reports to their boss, Jill. Jill listens attentively to the recordings, but then responds that these signals lasted only a few seconds. He questions how they can be sure that these signals came from aliens. Jane explains that the signals contain a pattern that only living beings could share. However, Jane does not have proof to back up his claims. Consequently, Jill denies Jane's request for further experimentation, expressing disbelief that these signals could be of alien origin. Jill suggests that the signals were likely caused by a star exploding. Jane, however, stands firm on his beliefs. Jill then calls Jane into his office and informs him that, considering their results, the funding has been significantly reduced. Therefore, I will have to reluctantly dismiss several people from the company, including Jane. When Jane learned of this, he didn't feel too stressed because he was confident that his skills would allow him to find another space research company willing to hire him. However, before leaving, Jane entrusted Jill with all the recordings he had obtained from space. Jill assured him that he would try to publish Jane's reports as soon as possible, after which Jane left. But then we see Jill destroying the recordings given by Jane, meaning he does not want Jane's experiments to be revealed to anyone. After leaving his organization, Jane began applying for jobs at various companies. However, he soon discovers that Jill has blacklisted him everywhere. This means that Jane can no longer join any space research organization. Jane cannot understand why Jill is acting this way. He had conducted a lot of research for his organization, and it had been successful, yet Jill still does not want him to work elsewhere. Determined, Jane rushes to confront Jill, who is attending a large conference. Jane shouts in front of everyone, demanding his recordings back, but Jill flatly denies any knowledge of the recordings and accuses Jane of lying to set him up. Jill even calls security to have Jane thrown out. Jane desperately needs all the details of his research because he has invested years into it. As a result, Jane keeps asking his friend Calvin for the recordings, but Calvin refuses, saying he cannot give them to him because agents are already present, claiming that the signals were received from their satellite, which gives them full rights to the recordings. Out of fear, Calvin reveals everything about Jane's research to the agents. This means the agents left with all of Jane's evidence. Jane becomes extremely frustrated, wondering why these people are after his research. Now, he feels that he must bring his experiment to the public at any cost. After thinking a lot, Jane came up with a good idea, so he joined a cable company as an operator. Once Jane became comfortable with his work, he connected all the satellites around him to his home. In a very short time, Jane set up a laboratory that was identical to the one in his previous organization. He then decided to use all these devices to detect the strange signals coming from space again so that the public could know these signals were from aliens. Jill wanted to keep this experiment under wraps because discovering the truth about aliens was a significant research breakthrough, and if Jane succeeded, he would become very famous. Jane dedicated himself to his research, but then he heard someone outside. When he went to check, he found a boy named KK, who lived nearby. Jane brought KK inside and shared everything he had developed. Although KK was just a child, he stayed to help Jane. Together, they began monitoring the signals coming from space. One night, Jane found the same large signal in his system that he had detected before. He was extremely happy and started gathering more information about it. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that half of the signals were coming from Earth. How is this possible? He had designed his devices to detect signals from space, and the signals he received last time had all originated from space. This left Jane puzzled, so he went to tell his friend Calvin about it, but the shocking discovery was that Calvin had been murdered. Jane couldn't understand who could be after them. Meanwhile, we see Ileana, who, according to her research, had discovered that Earth's temperature was continuously rising. If this temperature continued to rise at this rate, the Earth would eventually burn up completely. Therefore, Ileana decided to conduct her research by visiting various places. She first chose to head to Mexico, where the temperature was rising rapidly. Ileana set out on her journey, and at the same time, Jane also arrived in Mexico because the signals he received from Earth came from a space research center there. Jane took a taxi driver and headed directly to the space station. However, he later found out that the space station had been burned down just the night before. Feeling a bit disheartened, Jane went to a motel to spend the night. He was relaxing and taking a bath when suddenly the ceiling burst and water began to pour down. Jane quickly got out of there, otherwise he would have drowned. When he looked up, he saw an old man trying to attack him. The old man, upon seeing Jane, started to run away, so Jane began to chase him. In the chaos, the old man became trapped between four walls, but suddenly jumped backward like a frog, leaping to a considerable height. Jane was completely shocked, wondering how this old man could perform such feats. The old man managed to escape by climbing up to the building. The next day, when Jane returned to the space station, he saw Ileana with some police officers carrying equipment. Seeing Ileana in trouble, Jane went over to talk to her, but the police officers, noticing Jane's behavior, detained him as well. Ileana and Jane were quickly taken into a newly established space research center, where an agent clarified everything with them. After understanding the situation, the agent apologized for the mistake of detaining them, but she also informed Jane about her new research center. Jane felt something was off here, so he quickly took Ileana and left the place. Meanwhile, two agents were shown visiting Jane's house, where they left behind a strange ball. The ball spun around, creating a black hole that engulfed all of Jane's equipment, including the machines he used to detect signals. They had pulled everything inside, meaning that the two agents wanted to erase all evidence related to the aliens. Now, Ileana was sitting with Jane, explaining that she had been conducting research for several years and had observed a significant rise in Earth's temperature in a very short time. This temperature increase could not be created by humans alone, indicating the use of some external force that was raising the temperature from within the Earth. If this continued, humans would perish due to the extreme heat. These were the reasons why Ileana had come here, and she was suspicious of a recently established power plant because it was emitting the highest levels of radiation. Jane also pondered this, as he had been receiving signals from this power plant too. So, Jane told Ileana to go back to her hotel, and he stealthily made his way into the power plant. As Jane entered and began to check the area, he noticed that his taxi driver was also coming in. After a while Jane was investigating inside, he discovered that strange machines had been installed in the power plant, machines he had never seen before, as they were very advanced. As he ventured further inside, the whole truth unfolded before him. There was no power plant, but rather a dangerous alien base that had been established within. The agent who had been informing Jane and Ileana was actually an alien disguised as a human. They possessed an advanced machine capable of taking human DNA and converting aliens into human form. The truth was that these aliens had come to Earth many years ago and were now using their technically advanced machines to raise Earth's temperature so they could live comfortably here. If Earth's temperature continued to rise at this rate, humans would not be able to survive, and eventually, all humans would be wiped out, leaving only aliens. Jane was completely shocked to see such a massive alien operation, but before he could analyze more, one of the aliens spotted him. The alien informed its companions that an intruder had entered their power plant and now all the aliens were after Jane. Jane quickly approached the technical machine and transformed his appearance into that of another man, blending in among the aliens. Somehow, he managed to escape from the power plant, even shedding the skin of another human that he had been wearing to reveal his true form. Jane then went straight to the police to report everything he had discovered. However, the aliens had framed him for a false case, resulting in him being quickly imprisoned. Jane saw that Eliana had also been killed, presumably by the aliens the previous night, as she was the one who knew everything about them. Jane couldn't just sit idly by, so he escaped from jail and headed directly to America. Upon arriving, he met with Jill, who began to question him about the entire situation. It was then revealed that Jill was also one of the aliens, disguised as a human, and had been working here for years. Jill informed Jane that the aliens were using their technology to significantly increase global warming on Earth. What humans would have taken 100 years to accomplish, the aliens were doing in just 10 years, claiming that humans did not deserve Earth. They intended to kill all humans and establish their colony here. At that moment, Jane raised a recorder, stating that he had recorded everything Jill had said and would spread the news that they were aliens intending to kill humans, which would expose them. Jane then quickly escaped and went to KK, informing him of everything that had transpired. But when Jane returned home, he discovered that all his equipment had gone missing, having been thrown into the black hole by the aliens. Jane was determined to broadcast Jill's recording to the world. Therefore, he, along with KK and his friend Linda, set out to a nearby space station. Dodging the security guards, Jane began setting everything up to broadcast Jill's recording worldwide. With the knowledge he had, he was determined to succeed. He used it to fit the recording into the satellite. Jane was telling KK that when he gave the signal, he should press the button to broadcast everything Jill had said. Suddenly, an alien disguised as a human entered, attempting to kill Jane. However, Jane bravely grabbed a fire extinguisher and struck the alien in the face, causing it to shrink slowly, as these aliens needed extreme heat to survive. If their temperature dropped even slightly, they would die. The shocking part was that Jill had arrived in his van, destroying everything one by one. Jane ordered KK to press the button quickly, but KK didn't respond at all. It then became clear that KK was also an alien sent by Jill to keep an eye on Jane. KK pulled out the recording and handed it over to Jill. Jill then set up a massive ball that quickly transformed into a black hole, pulling everything inside. Jane, however, managed to save Linda first and then decrease the temperature, converting Jill into ice. Jane rushed to grab the recording from Jill's hands, but Jill was still alive and grabbed Jane's arm. Jane hit him hard to free himself, causing Jill's hand to break off and fall to the ground. Now Jane had both his and Jill's recordings, containing all the truth, and he managed to get outside safely with Linda. Jane told KK to inform his alien friends that he would broadcast this message no matter what. KK then revealed his true alien form and jumped away. A few days later, it became known that Jane had sent the recording to all news channels and satellites, exposing the aliens' intentions to everyone. Following this, missions were launched to eliminate the aliens, and our story concludes here with this suspense.